Welcome to Cultimatum, the podcast that delves deep into the culture and complexities of cults and human trafficking. Your hosts are myself, Anonymous Andrew, and Melody. Each week we explore different facets of cult life and human trafficking.
And I'm Melody. Having experienced the trauma of a cult firsthand, specifically the House of Yahweh, I'm here as an advocate for fellow survivors. My journey has inspired me to help others who find themselves in similar situations.
Our podcast is committed to respecting our guests' privacy. To ensure their comfort and safety, our guests can choose to remain anonymous or use a fake name.
And Andrew, before we get started, we also want to issue a trigger warning. Some episodes may contain potentially disturbing subjects such as sexual abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other sensitive topics. Discretion is advised.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults and human trafficking. And my name is Anonymous Andrew, and with me is Melody. Hi, Melody.
Hi, Andrew. Today we're moving another episode over from the Anonymous Andrew podcast. The title of this episode is the conclusion of the TFU investigation, and this is Andrew interviews a woman named Ellen. Ellen is somebody that Andrew met on a Facebook group about TFU. And she's just a person who is really passionate about the TFU, and she also is passionate about the Nexium as well, the Nexium cult. And I know that she touches on love bombing and brainwashing, and when she talks about that, and which I experienced both of those things in my cult as well. And I think there were some predictions talked about the fall of the TFU too. So that's I mean, we all hope that's going to happen with cults, but most of the time it doesn't, unfortunately. So we'll see what happens.
Well, no, if you just look at, for those who don't know, Judith Castillo is from the Luz del Mundo, Iglesia de Luz del Mundo from Mexico, and their second apostle is now doing 15 years, but the cult is still alive and well. So even though they crack down on the pedophilia or the sex abuse, the cult still survives. So bringing these cults down, you would think.
There's a member of my cult, my ex-cult, that is now in prison for child molestation, and they still set a plate setting for him, even though he's not there and he doesn't attend.
Oh my God.
A place setting for him at the Passover dinner and still honor him, even though he's in prison for child molestation. So just because a higher up gets arrested for doing horrible things does not mean that they even acknowledge, because they basically have said that they've given him a Christ-like status, that he's being persecuted, and it's not that he didn't really do anything. And
martyr.
Yes, a martyr. Exactly. They've turned him into a martyr. So it's
exactly
just interesting how that can be switched around for. In a cult like that, how they can do that. But
I almost feel like there should be a cult task force created by law enforcement, and maybe but we'll save that. We'll save that for our. You and I are going to have a discussion one day on cults.
Yes.
Let's listen to Ellen, and we'll talk on the other side.
Yes, for sure.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of Anonymous Andrew Podcast. And this is another episode on the Twin Flames universe cult. And in the beginning, I didn't use the word cult at the beginning, but the more episodes I did and the more people I talked to, there is no doubt in my mind that they are a cult. And today with me, I have a woman named Ellen, and Ellen is part of the Facebook group, one of the group, or both of the group. Well, hello, Ellen. Welcome. Say hi.
Hi.
Okay.
I am part of both of them, though.
You're a part of both. Okay, so there's two groups on Facebook that we know of, that we belong to, that are trying to help people understand, and the ex-members and the family member. We're trying to support anybody who has had a Twin Flames encounter, right? I guess is the way to put that.
That is true.
So, Ellen, I invited you on today because out of many of the people that I've spoken to on there, you seem to have a real fire lit under your butt. Like you really are passionate about bringing this cult down.
Jeff certainly affected me, that's for sure.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you got involved with the group. When did you first hear about them? And we'll go from there.
I've been fascinated with cults my entire life. And
okay.
I don't care. Let everybody believe their own things and go have your groups. It's the ones that hurt people. And we've all seen from history just how horrible some of them end. And I'm like anybody else. I just never heard of Twin Flames Universe before until I saw that documentary. And I just couldn't believe it. And then I just jumped down that rabbit hole and I can't get enough information on it. But I'm so worried about this cult because if it's not stopped, it's going to be one that winds up in the history books of even more abuse. You know, it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially plans for the future. I mean, it's scary.
If for those who are listening who watched either documentary, either the Amazon or the Netflix, you can see the psychosis of Jeff and Shalia. And I don't think you get a real sense of how deep it goes in him. While we were in this group, there are actual Twin Flame members that have come into this group and are trying to defend the group. Let's talk about, because I watched another a YouTube video yesterday about brainwashing, about how they actually get you to join and believe in what they're preaching or what they're trying to ultimately get your money, but accomplish. What's your opinion on, I guess, I'm actually going somewhere with this question. If you remember the episode I did 2 weeks ago where the woman who rented a part of her house out to Jeff in 2016, the part where she talks about Jeff backed her up to the banister on her second floor, and she thought that he was going to throw her off the balcony, the banister. I mean, that just tells you this was 2016 before Twin Flames even existed. They were just trying to, Jeff and Shalia were just doing videos at that point, YouTube videos. But you could see how psychotic he was, and she said the way he looked at her, he's got this way of looking directly into your eyes, and it's creepy, right? It's really creepy.
I think he was trying to hypnotize her when he kept saying, we're going to stay living here. You're going to move. You know,
right.
I really do believe he was thinking he had that power over her, but that was downright scary, you know.
Well, he was asserting his dominance. He was like, I'm here now, and this is now my home. And
oh God, I'm sorry.
Luckily for those who didn't hear that episode, luckily she was able to get them out of the house within a couple of months. So, okay, so at what point did you join this Facebook group?
I joined it the second I got done watching that documentary. I literally hung up and went right to Google, and from Google I went to YouTube and then to Facebook. And sure, I found the first one, and then I found the second one. And
okay,
it's just I've learned a lot just reading through them.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of information in there. In those two groups, I found, and that's where I found the people to come on. Except for one person, that's where I found people to come on to chat with me. And I mentioned this before. There were many people, including yourself, who fed me information about who I might be able to reach out to come on the podcast. But I'm not going to mention their names. But they declined to come on and make a comment or even discuss it. But they were former members of TFU. So, anyway, I which is I thank you for coming on, because it almost seems people are still afraid of Jeff and Shalia, and I mentioned to you and to the group, they started following me on TikTok last week, which yes. So
You have yourself a new friend now.
I have a new friend, although they seem to have disappeared again. So I think they popped on, they followed me, and then they disappeared. That was their little way of intimidating me. Like, hey, we know who you are, we know what you're doing, but the fact that they unfollowed me means that they're not worried. They know that I'm not going to do anything. I don't have the power to bring them down.
One mother, even. That's another reason I'm worried now. All right, they say they're worth $5 million. Well, today's date, that's not really much money. But if he continues, I can imagine how much he'll have in 10 years from now. That's what Keith Raniere did from Nexium. Anybody that left his group or anybody that went against him, and I'm talking psychologists, anybody, he would think nothing of spending $10 million to take someone down and spend many years keeping people in litigation, because he had Claire Brockman as a member, and she had endless millions of dollars. She's in prison now for her role financing all the harm he's done over the years. And
okay, well, let's talk about Nexium for a moment. For those who are listening who might not know who Nexium is, and I didn't even know until Ellen told me, tell us a little bit about Nexium and who they were and where they are today.
That is the one documentary that really opened my eyes onto, not everybody that's in a cult is stupid or not smart or easy taken over. They target smart people with money, or somebody that can make them a lot of money. And nobody goes out to just join a cult. You know, they're joining a good thing at first, and whatever it's based upon, they get what they need. And the second they join it, they're love bombed to begin with. They feel like they found their people. They're learning so much, and they're lacking something to bring them there to begin with, And if it's company, whatever it is, and they have all that. But nobody sees the bad until a lot further down the line. And it's usually people that work for them. And the is Keith Raniere is somebody I consider that played games his whole life. I don't know if he even knows what truth means. He just fabricated everything, and everybody believed him. I mean, he was a judo champion at 11 and talked and walked at 1. I mean, it was just really weird what he claimed he can do. The smartest person in the world. And
yeah, I think he does. I think he is a genius. I think somewhere you saw the documentary. By the way, Ellen, the documentary Ellen was referring to. Tell us the name of the documentary.
It's The Vow. And then the second one was made on the Star Channel called Seduced. And like I said, they targeted smart people, and they wanted famous people. And in Nexium, there was a lot of famous people. And it was an improvement group. A lot of people took their main classes and really learned a lot from it and left. It's the ones that stayed in, and they convinced to make a career out of it. That's when it turned really crazy.
So and they have
it's a sex cult,
Yeah. So I did not see that documentary yet. Let me just emphasize that yet. But I did watch some YouTube yesterday, and there are people, there are ex-members of Nexium who are coming out, and they're doing interviews on YouTube. And one of them, her name was Sarah. And she did an interview with a gentleman by the name of Michael Rosenbaum. And you're right, Sarah and I think Allison Mack, and these were people in Hollywood. They were, so you're talking about, they were targeting people who had money, people who were famous, people who had status. And Right. And exactly. And that first course that you are introduced to is called ESP. And they gave the podcast or the YouTube video I watched gave two explanations of what ESP stands for, and I did not write them down. But it's not ESP in that you and I would
It's
think of.
Executive Success Program.
Thank you. That's what it is. Okay. And you join that and you go and you sit in these classes, which they're held at these hotel conventions where you go. And I think you have to stay for 16 days or something. You start off with 7 days.
Right. What people don't understand too, that's another point. When you go to a psychiatrist or somewhere, you're sitting there for an hour. When you go to these group meetings, they have you sitting there sometimes 12 hours.
Right.
And you're tired, you don't eat much. You're a perfect candidate to fall under suggestion by doing that. And they know.
The woman, Sarah, that I watched interviewed yesterday, she said the first 2 days she was not happy about what she was hearing and she did not want any more part of it, but somebody had convinced her to stay one more day and listen. And it was on the third day that she succumbed to the brainwashing. And that's when she took the bait, or whatever the term they use to reel these people in. And she became one of the recruiters. And she started recruiting people to come to more and more of these meetings. And from what I understand, you didn't get to meet Keith until you succeed. You finished the 16 days. You had to achieve some level of something. I don't remember all of it. And even then, Keith was still like he didn't call himself a god, but he was the Vanguard, right? That was his nickname.
Vanguard, yes.
The Vanguard, right.
Years later, it came down to it was one of the pinball machines he had in a garage at his girlfriend's house. And he used to play Vanguard all the time.
So that's how he got his nickname.
He won't say that is, but his girlfriend said that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this woman, Sarah, I don't remember how long she stayed in. I think it was many, many years, where she was an actress and she gave up her acting, and as did many other actors. There were other famous actors and famous people who were, like you said, they were wealthy and they were well known, and they gave up everything for this Nexium, including their money. I think, who was it you told me that helped fund it? Was it Allison Mack?
Claire Brackman.
Okay.
Aired to like Seagram 7. And
yes.
It was her father that actually took his daughters there. And then he got out of it because he thought this isn't right, but they had a hold on his daughters already. And all of a sudden there was a big magazine article about Keith Raniere saying he was a weird cult leader. And he just made Claire feel so bad for it. And that's how he probably convinced her to make it up to him for the rest of his life, because his father, he swore his father wrote that article. But
really?
He was allowed to when he first started that program, he had a whole set of women. He had an inner circle. He always stayed in New York. They were branched out all over the place in many states. But only, like you said, the elite would get to meet him. But he had a harem of women in the beginning, and he convinced them all to just be with him and to accept the other women. Well,
and that was up in Albany, right?
Yes. And now, like some of the women said, he traded out the old women and went after the younger women.
The new one, yep.
And he played on each and every one of them.
What was that called? So the ESP was one stage, but if you got to go meet Keith,
was the name of Nexium was the name of the company, but they were selling ESP.
Right.
Honestly, I think because a lot of people's taken those courses, they were actually really good courses that people took out into their lives and applied it to their work and even succeeded more. It was the women that stayed with him, especially his inner circle. See, Keith had it all. Millionaire, all the women he could have and wanted, but like a lot of narcissists, it's not enough. They
Not
get
enough. Yeah.
what they want, and then it starts getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And Keith took it all the way to branding, and
Explain to the audience what branding means.
well, inside Nexium, there was the top women on top. Keith convinced them. He lied about this all at first, but he had convinced the women to start a secret group, and it
Right.
was called DOS.
That's
It
what it is. DOS, right.
was supposed to be a woman empowering group, and it turned out mainly it came down to for I walked away from it for his own sexual gratification. He was
Yeah.
having sex with all of them. At one point, they all had slaves and masters. That was the whole.
That
He started with
right.
like 5, 6 women, and then they recruit more, and then they were obligated to go out. I mean, every day they had to turn in names that they were getting people in.
Right. So the women in DOS had to go out and find more women and to bring to Keith. And at some point, I saw where they were showing like a tree where Keith was at the top.
Yep.
The next person was, I think, either Claire or Allison, who they termed a flying monkey, which I explained to you earlier. So in The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West had the flying monkeys who did all her dirty work. So I don't know if it was Claire or Allison did the dirty work of getting women to come and be part of DOS for Keith.
Before these women even joined the group, they were told they would have to hand over some kind of documents or pictures that if it ever got out there, it would make their lives really hard. Collateral, period.
Yeah.
And that their master would only keep it. And when it first started, nobody believed Keith was in it. They really believed it was just women. But then every week they had to give more collateral and more collateral. And they all believed it was just going to be a women's empowering group. Well, the next thing, they're being told to go seduce Keith. And then they actually had to, it goes as far as even dungeons
Yeah.
put up. I mean, that is really a good documentary to watch to understand how even smart people this can happen to.
Right.
Oh,
yeah. When we see Twin Flames, what's happening to some of the people that are joining Twin Flames, you're thinking of people who are heartbroken, lonely, might be depressed, suffering from a mental illness, or the desire, FOMO, fear of missing out. They want to join something, and they could be your average everyday people, everyday Americans. But in Nexium, it wasn't like that. You really had to have a status. You really had to know somebody or even be somebody to even be considered. Just quickly, the branding, they were actually branded with a hot iron. Is that correct?
A cauterizing pen.
A quarter, right. They were cauterized.
Up to like a half hour to do it. The women at first were told they would be getting a tattoo.
Right.
And they wouldn't know until they were there. And this whole time, this was videotaped also.
Oh,
I mean,
I didn't know that. Okay.
When all this finally blew up, Keith went in front of everybody in the organization and totally denied all of this. He said he had no part of it. But Keith always had to have everything recorded and everything on videotape believe it or not, for future generations to come back because they're going to be making history. Well, they made history, all right,
They
but
certainly did. Yeah. so
you know,
so
I am so compelled to write him, and I know I won't get anywhere, but it fascinates me. He literally had everything he could possibly ever want, and he had so many people under his control, but yet it just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker.
okay. Let's segue that back to TFU because I believe that and I we know that there's up to, I think you told me, up to 10,000 cults in America.
Yes,
So there are small cults who are just simply religious people who believe in one indoctrination or something, and they're harmless, although they may alienate you from your family, but they make you believe or do certain things. But there may not be sex involved, or there may not be labor, or there may not be slavery involved. But these cults like Twin Flames and Nexium, and while Twin Flames is not at the level of Nexium yet, I believe, because if you look at Keith, what a genius he was, but how stupid can you be to make videos of what he was doing, of the branding, probably videos of having sex with these women, taking documentation, and I understood that some of them had to hand over nudes of themselves as collateral. So like that if they left or they ratted on him, that he would release the nudes. That's what this woman said yesterday. At some point, I think Jeff is going to make the same mistake. I think he's going to get his narcissistic personality is going to get to the point where he's going to need, like you said before, want more and more and more. And it's and I do think Jeff is a very, how do I say this? Not in a, I want to say it in a deflammatory way. He's a genius, but he's a psychotic, neurotic, psychosis genius, criminally insane. Maybe would be the way to call him.
exactly. He's just plain outright dangerous. They both are.
They both are. But Keith came. He was taken down ultimately.
120 years, and he's in Tucson, Arizona, as we speak.
In prison, right?
And I'm telling you, until that verdict was read, all the ex-members were so scared because if he would have gotten out, Keith would have gone after him for the rest of his life. I mean, one lady, just because she didn't want him sleeping with other women, and they targeted her right away, and he literally ruined her life. I mean, the craziness, he could not stand anybody walking away from him, and he would go to great lengths to make any and every one of them pay.
And that's where I think, so what Keith was experiencing was the narcissism and the psychosis was taking hold of his, like he wasn't thinking smart and logically and rationally, and moving into the dangerous area where he ultimately got taken down. And I think that's what's going to happen to Jeff. I think Jeff is going to. So the last that I heard, and I think I may have heard it from you, is that he's looking to buy land now where he is. The gathering they were going to have up in Traverse City, Michigan, was it? Again, he was going to have like a
wedding.
A wedding, thank you. But he couldn't get the permit, or he couldn't get the land because ultimately,
he did get a venue. He did, but actually, people from our one Facebook group, the one lady knew who owned that venue, and they contacted them, and then they told Jeff and Shalia they could not have their.
They couldn't use the venue.
Right. So now a lot of our members reached out to all the venues around there to let them know and asked, have you booked them? And they said no, and they don't plan on it. So.
Yeah, but that's not going to stop Jeff. So from what I'm understanding, Jeff is just going to purchase land. He's just going to find. I'm sure. I actually did Google Jeff's compound on one of those Google Maps with the satellite, and I saw his house. And there's a lot of property around there. I don't know if it's owned or if it's for sale, but from what I understand, he's looking to buy property and build on that property because members want to come and live in the compound. And then this is where you and I spoke, I think, yesterday. He wants to produce children. So couples to come and produce the next generation. And that's where you and I and many members in the group are very concerned about these children that are not even born yet, because I don't even know if the partners are even together yet. But over the next year or two, they're going to all come together, buy this property, move in, and start procreating children. And at that point,
the golden children.
The golden children.
And he wants his coaches to be making at least $10,000 a month. And that's why Keely on the end only said she made $7,000 that month. And she told herself, that's the first time she actually defied him, to herself. And
right.
But what he did, he's been looking for property for a long time. And he even wanted them to move up there and live in a trailer and help turn that big farmhouse into a building. They wanted them to do it. But that's what scares me more than anything. But some of the members, are women and women. And they already said for the couples that can have kids, they'll get a donor. Well, one of the ladies wanted to pick out her own father. And then on the end, they said, no, Jeff's going to be the only one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. And then, of course, I think this is pure conjecture, and I'm not alleging this at all. But if he buys his property and starts having these people move in and start procreating, and these children become young children, 8, 9, 10, God forbid this cult lasts that long, I can see them passing these children around to procreate with other members of the community. I mean, it's limitless to what Jeff's mind will go to create in his mind the ultimate, although he's never used the word nirvana, but the ultimate organization. He really believes that this is
that they're doing good. Yeah. I mean, they've talked herself into it. I mean, how he went to bed one night and woke up the next day and put together 20 couples, is because God told them that was their true flames now, and they were all same sex, I mean, that's really crazy.
I have a sneaky suspicion that Shalia will have part of in bringing him down. I think at some point Jeff will do something where Shalia will become either jealous, or she'll wake up one day and realize from the woman that I spoke to who knew her in high school, although people can change over 20 years, I think it's Shalia that might actually bring him down one day.
I do too, because if you look at their earlier tapes, she did a lot more talking. She was involved in it a lot more. Now she sits there and agrees with almost everything he says.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a few of those looks she's looked at him when he's told her to be quiet and to shut up. Now you could tell she didn't let it go.
Yeah, I can see her having some part in taking him down. But the whole concept, the whole reason we brought up Nexium was that these large cults, just like Heaven's Gate, although they committed suicide, although that's a possibility here too. Who knows what Jeff? We don't know.
I'm really worried about some of the people he's convinced to be transgender. because
Oh, well, that's another whole topic. Yeah.
people that's had surgeries, I'm really worried that when some of them, if they realize it's not the way they really wanted to go,
It'll be
I
too
mean,
late. Yeah.
there's lifelong trauma there for all of them.
Yeah. Well, for a woman who's clearly born a woman and to be told by Jeff that you need to have top surgery and transform into a male, just and so she does it only because she doesn't know anything any better. And then 5 years from now, either when the culprit is brought down or if she decides it's not for me, she's now lost her breast. She's already transed into a male, or the masculine energy as they call it. And you're right, her life is ruined. So
Jeff is somebody that's really, really dangerous. And
yeah, I agree.
really feel horrible for the people in there. And the coaches, I mean, they get abused and then they turn around and then they're the abusers. They really believe they're helping people. I go to the coaches' pages all the time, and I know I'm not doing any good. I can't get through to them, but I always say, I wish you would really look at what you're participating in. And
well, yeah, as you know, there was a couple of Twin Flame members who did come into the Facebook group and try to not only defend TFU, but ask why is the Facebook group bullying. They actually used the word bullying. Why are you bullying us? They're clearly brainwashed to the point where they really don't see what's going on.
Because a lot of them don't see.
No. Yeah, well, they're drinking the Kool-Aid that Jeff is handing out. So, Ellen, we got to wrap it up. I would like to think that this is not going to be a long-term cult. I think, like I said before, Jeff is going to make the mistake that Keith made. At some point, it's going to get his head is going to spin out of control, and he's going to make a dumb mistake. And I do think that law enforcement, I don't have any information on this or intel, but I think they're watching very carefully, and they're just waiting for him to make that wrong move.
They are, because a lot of evidence has been handed over to him already.
Yeah. I just think they can't go in and arrest him or anybody yet, because it's not enough to... if you're going to bring him down, you want to bring him down like they did Keith. They want to bring him down and give him 120 years in prison. If you go in there now and he gets off with a slap on the wrist or gets, I don't know, 3 years in jail with 18 months probation, whatever they call that, then he's back out. They got to bring Jeff down to where he does some serious time, and that'll be the end of that, hopefully. So,
well, I'm going to pay attention to them and pray that day comes sooner than later. If not, that we're going to hear of some horrible things in the future.
Oh, I'm sure.
This children so bad.
So as far as the pod series that I'm doing on the Twin Flames, I'm going to. I don't want to use the word conclude. I'm going to, until I can get more information or I have more people to step forward. I do have somebody that might be willing to come on and talk about cults, that she's writing a book. I do have another thing going on that I'm working on, which you know about, but I don't want to talk about. So for now, we're going to conclude the Twin Flames investigation until we can get either more information, until Jeff does something stupid and we can start talking about it again.
We'll have updates.
We'll have updates. Thank you. All right, Ellen, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's really important what you're doing. The best thing anybody could do is to keep this in the light and not to talk against the people that are involved in it, like making them feel like they're stupid and stuff, because
no,
they're not.
We didn't mention anybody. As a matter of fact, I did speak of the people that we compared the Nexium members to the Twin Flame members. They're vulnerable. They're lost. They're lonely. They're hurting. Not once.
Love,
Yeah. So I do feel for them, because This is why my podcast got started. A year and a half ago, left a relationship that I thought was my twin flame. And I don't mean that in the TFU sense, but I thought she was my soulmate. And it turned out that she was anything but, and it broke my world. But I didn't go running to an organization. So anyway.
I went back and we can all relate what's happened to you because it's happened to most of us somewhere throughout our life, and it's horrible. It happens. I've always promised people, if it doesn't work out, I'll tell you first, it's all anybody wants is respect. And then when people go off and are doing all this stuff behind your back, it just turns to a whole nother level of, I don't want to swear on here, but I don't know.
You can swear. You can swear.
But I hope that never happens to you again, and I'm sorry that happened to you.
Well, thank you. But to the point is that I did what I thought would be helpful for me, and one was to go to therapy and continue to go to my 12-step program, but I started a podcast to talk about it and to let other people know about this. And this is why I jumped in on the pod series. When I joined the group, a lot of people wanted to know what my agenda was. Why do you want to do a podcast on this? And I said, only to keep the conversation continue going. The more we talk about it, the more it's the words. And I know Netflix and Amazon, they did their thing. And that's already a year and a half old or whatever it is. But that's going to drift into the background, and we're going to forget TFU exists, and they're going to keep doing their thing in the background. Exactly. We got to keep talking about it, and the more we talk about it, the more I'm hoping this woman, Alice Hines, who did the article in Vanity Fair and who was in the Amazon. I hope she does a follow-up article, a year from now or something. With this, we got to keep talking about it. That's what I'm saying. So
exactly. Well, this cult it's not that much different than others, but what's really got everybody is how he's had people transgender, that's just a whole nother level of craziness,
Yeah, and there's things that we don't even know that haven't been revealed yet. I'm sure there's so much more going on there.
Especially with Jeff. He, like you said, I do believe his wife she's going to have enough of him too down the line. I think down the line he'll probably want more wives. I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't disagree. That's where I think he's going to make that mistake, and he's going to go the way that Keith went, and that will ultimately bring him down. But it might take another couple of years. We'll see. But I do predict that he will not be around in the next 5 or 10 years, or TFU. And hopefully nobody will step in and take over his shoes or fill his shoes, as they say. So,
well, half those companies just don't hurt people. Don't be committing crimes and doing lifelong damage to people, They could have ran that business up and up.
I said that in the last episode. I was talking to Alana McKenzie, and I said, look, it might have been somebody else, but I said, if you want to create a company and start selling courses on how to better yourself and how to find your twin flame, that's fine. And if you want to call yourself Jesus, that's fine. But when you start crossing the line into slavery or making people work for nothing, and the transgendering and possibly hurting children, I'm not saying they are. We don't know what's to come. I think there's a lot more yet to be revealed that we don't know about yet, or he has planned, and it's only gonna blow up. So, Ellen, thank you for coming on tonight. I know it was last minute notice. This will be up.
I'm happy you're doing this, and like I said, it's important to me that he's taken down, and it is so many other people, because it's sick and it's dangerous,
All right. Well, you keep feeding me the information, and I'll keep trying to do what I'm doing. This will air tomorrow. So to the people who are listening, we're recording this on Monday, February 26th. and happy birthday to both of my. I have two boys. One yesterday was his birthday, and another one's tomorrow. So,
Oh wow, that's
yeah,
weird.
yeah. I got three boys, but two of them were born 2 days apart. So,
Wow, first time I've heard that. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, all right, Ellen, we'll talk to you in the group.
This
And
was nice talking to you, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
all right, have a good night.
So we want to thank Ellen for coming on the show and to discuss her knowledge about cults and cult documentaries. I'm going to say I did like how she compared the cult leaders, the difference kind of, and not only the difference, but more importantly, the similarities between Keith, who was the leader of Nexium, and Jeff, the leader of TFU, and how many similarities they have, because that is across the board. You can do that with cult leaders across the board, because they all have so much in common about the way that they run their cults, the way that they, control people, and the tactics that they use, and similar personality traits as well. The controlling, manipulative, narcissistic, psychopathic, dangerous, etc.
And I just want to give Ellen a shout out and a thank you, because while I was researching TFU, she came forward and helped me find guests and even find some support groups. Actually, I only found one group, and she found me the second group. So, Ellen, I don't know if you're going to hear this, but thank you for your help during the TFU investigation.
So if you want to show support for the show, you can do that by going ahead and giving us a rating wherever you listen, whether that's Apple or Spotify. We'd also like you to please share, follow, and continue listening to all our latest episodes.
You can also show your support by joining our Facebook community group under the name Cultimatum. If you'd like to share your story with us, you can email us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you're an ex-cult member looking for more support, you can find more support at Cult Escape and Recovery Group on Facebook.
If you'd like to hear more of me and Anonymous Andrew Podcast, it's Anonymous Andrew Podcast, Life and the Choices We Make. And you can hear me blabber over there, because I do a lot of blabbering. All right, so actually I did a weekend rant today, so I got to get that up. All right, okay. All right, Melody. We'll thank you everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, thank you.